Some jamming going on in my house. Get myself together, y'all. I see y'all in there already. We're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to talk to Dr. Steve Gallen, Miami-Dade County Schools. Vice Chair. Just letting y'all get on up in here with me right now, get the place warmed up. You know, we always go 15 minutes before. We got to be on time. We tell the kids to be on time. We want grown folks to be on time. So I just need y'all to do this right now. Start your little parties. Start your watch parties. And let's get it going. I mean, we're going to have a good time tonight. Dr. Steve Gallen from Miami-Dade County School System. He's a great individual, great guy. We're going to have a good time tonight. As soon as I get some of these people here. Then I'm gonna jump on another Zoom tonight. After that, I got like 2 Zooms. Another Zoom event where I'm gonna have, I'll be talking to Ms. Melba Peterson. Let me see if I can get her. How do I, am I delayed over here? It's gonna be good tonight, but how you guys' week have been? Tell me how your week been. Because it has been a very interesting week. A very interesting week. Is everybody straight? Who is this? Craig Carter. What's up, Craig Carter? Williams, no, this is a school board meeting here tonight. So we ain't doing no wild stuff on here. What's up, Felicia, Woody? How you doing, Felicia? Hope all is well. How y'all doing? What's up, Spencer? We got a lot of things to talk about today. A lot of things to talk about. I just want to set up, make sure we all nice and set up right here to get on here and go. Because this is going to be a great conversation. So I could actually see you guys right here. 50 comments already. Because this is going to be a great conversation. All right. So I need to get on back over here to Zoom. Get myself back over here and here. Yeah. How y'all doing? Is everybody good? As long as you're all good. Hey. Ruben Young, Uncle Luke, it's been a while. Running to become the next Miami-Dade County first African American county clerk. Ruben Young. Hey, Ruben, you're gonna win because you know what? Your name is Ruben. Hey, your name is Ruben. They're gonna automatically think you're a Jewish guy. That's gonna be all right. Hey, Ruben. I wish I had you on here so I could. We could talk about the position of the clerk. You know, because that's what it's all about. Hey, man. It's going to be a lot of first things, first African-American, a lot of different things. You know, hopefully we have a first African-American woman, female woman, who's running for state attorney. Man, my shirt is not. See, this is why you start early, so you get yourself together. We got a lot of firsts. It's going to be a lot of firsts. But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, hey, tonight, It's a very important conversation that we're going to have tonight. We're going to talk to Dr. Steve Gallen. Steve Gallen is the vice chair of Miami-Dade County School Board, which is a very, very important, very, very important seat. So he'll be joining us at 6 o'clock. Then later on in the telecast, we're going to be joined by JT Wilcox, great sports writer, high school sports writer. He's going to join us at around 6:30, 6:45 when we start talking about sports, high school sports. But in the meantime, hey, I'm happy you guys came. I'm happy that you all making it. Hey, look, let me just say this. It's very important to put the mask on. Don't get caught up in the politics of everything that's going on TV and what people are saying and what people, trying to figure out whether or not this is what they want to do and make it into a political thing. Put the mask on. It's very, very important, especially if you're in some of these hot areas. What's up, LaToya Williams? I see you on here. You just joined the telecast. We're gonna have some good conversation with Dr. Steve Gallen, but people, put the mask on. Don't get caught up in the politics. We need to get back to normal. We need people going back to work because I'm really, thinking about families who, when Corona is over with, a lot of families are going to be getting put out of their houses, because they haven't been working for 3 or 4 months. Fortunately, a lot of people have been able to continue working through it all. Some of the major corporations, if you work for, the government and big corporations, you are able to, still make your money, but there's a lot of people going to be put out of work. There's a lot of people going to be put out of their houses. So we have not seen the worst of this COVID. And that's why it's so important to get back, it's so important to get back to normal, and the only way we're going to get back to normal is we conduct ourselves in a responsible way. All these parties at Airbnbs and all that stuff can wait. You know what I'm saying? All this pool parties and gambling parties and people, just violating the rules, people going into the stores, people not washing their hands, people not using the masks and all that, all that stuff could wait, so, I mean, it's really about taking responsibility. We got to take responsibility of what we're doing. I know that's a boring topic. People want to talk about other things, but I just had to say that before we get joined by Dr. Gallen, who will be on here at 6 o'clock. I like to start off early so we get the room warmed up and everything. Who all we got on here? We got quite a few people on here. Some students are going out of state to play football. I guess, that'll be a question. That'll be a question for the good doctor, the good doctor. But, I know y'all think some of the students are going out of state. I don't think they're going to leave the state because there still is a plan of playing football, and everybody wants to play football in Miami. So if there is some students that's going out of state, then that means they really they didn't secure a starting position in the first place. I know I coach at Miami Edison, and I don't have too many evacuees, I would say, even though the rest of the state is open. That's kind of crazy. The rest of the state is open. We in election time. Yep. One of my good friends on here said, make sure you tell everybody to vote. Vote. Yeah, November 3rd is for everybody, but the most important voting going on in Dade County is August 18th. Make sure you vote. You got your write-in ballot. Go ahead and write it in, fill it out, put it in, stick it in the mail, and then also track it, because I'm pretty sure a lot of ballots, and the reason why I say track it, because they'll throw your ballot in the garbage because your signature wasn't matching up, or they'll miss a vote, so you can actually track your ballot. What's up, Philip Roundtree? My main man, that's Phil. Phil go all the way back to the Eastern Airlines days. Man, boy, that's when I used to ride Eastern, and And back then, you could ride Eastern Airlines back then, and really and actually, you just imagine how long ago that was. You didn't get. I don't think we were getting searched before we got on the plane. I think there were quite a few times where I ended up on the plane with my gun, or up under the plane with my gun. So those were the days. I always it's my man Philip Roundtree. He's a real prominent guy in the community and everything, and we love him to death. But again, ladies and gentlemen, we're here today, Sunday Talk. We're here every Sunday. Everything is all brought to you by, I'm doing a Facebook Live. I can't talk right now. Everything, see, that's how people see me on here, they go to calling on the phone. Like I'm supposed to stop and talk. Really? Don't do that. Don't call. But it's all brought to you by www.lootrecords.com, where you can go over there and get all your Loot Records paraphernalia, all your gear and everything like that. Just going on over there and get you some product. What's up, Tamika Teller? Tamika Teller. I can't wait to vote. Tamika Teller, you did not get your you didn't get a what it is, an at-home ballot? You didn't have a mail-in, didn't get the mail-in ballot? I guess Tamika Teller probably like me. She didn't want no mail-in ballot. I'm going down there to vote. Hopefully I don't catch the coronavirus. Y'all gotta pray for me. We got Gerald Hardwick. I see Mr. Hardwick on here, boy. Hey, schools. We talking schools today, boy. Bring out Dade County Public Schools people and also sports people, because this is going to be a very good conversation. Very good conversation. It's going to be deep because Dr. Gallen, folks, if you didn't know, he put in a proposal to get out of the Florida High School Association. That is the governing body of sports in the state of Florida. That's where your state championships and all that other stuff is and everything. People go and play for state. It's all functioned by the Florida High School Association. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about to Dr. Gallen. You know what I mean? He's the vice chair. We're going to talk about school openings because I know y'all got a whole bunch of questions. And I want y'all to make sure on here y'all ask questions, because I am looking at y'all on here. See, I'm looking at y'all right here because I can't see you on the Zoom. The Zoom, if I go to Facebook off the platform, what'll end up happening is everything will be on a delay. So I want you all to be engaged, ask questions, because this is going to be good. Great conversation. It is going to be good. I can't wait to get the doc in here. 4 more minutes. 4 more minutes, not 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh. But again, people, what's up? Foundation, Tamika Teller, who else on here? Football, Orange County, football in the building. See, we got everybody. Let me tell you, it's going to be so many people across the state tuned into this, because this is a very, very important conversation. Very important conversation. Very important conversation for the state of Florida, because, you know, everybody in the state of Florida, I'm like, no, if you don't play Dade County, if you don't play Dade County, you have to beat Dade County to win the state for it to be valid. It's not valid if you don't beat Dade County. You already know that. I mean, how many teams we took up there this year? And that's why we got JT Wilcox, who's an expert in high school football. Just getting this hello from Pennsylvania. They got some good. They got, hey, what's up, Jesse? Jesse from Pennsylvania. See, we got people all over the country tuned into this right here. This is gonna be epic. I know I got Facebook Live going on all my other pages, and start a watch party, people. Start a watch party. Start a watch party. That is very important. And see, let me tell you why this conversation is so important. We're going to talk about opening the schools, because opening the schools directly affects the entire community. And, you know, we got asked the doc his take on it, and he'll give us some insight of some of the directions. But again, if you don't get all the information, you can always go on Miami-Dade County School. I'm pretty sure it's ORG, and you get the whole full plan of the reopening plan of schools whenever it gets ready to be open. It's an entire plan on there. It lays out all aspects of it, because I know a lot of parents are concerned about their kids going back to school, or if not. There it is, Thomas Treese in the building. I see you, LCO, Liberty City Warriors. We always stay in the building. We support one another. That's what it's all about. Lucas Herb, I see you, boss. Yep. 6 o'clock on the dot. We're gonna tune in. We're gonna have Doc come on, and we're gonna have a good conversation. Now, let me say this. It is very important that you guys go out and vote. I'm not gonna keep saying, I'm gonna keep saying that. I'm gonna keep saying, take your butt out and vote. That is very, very important. You have to go out and vote. August 18th, some very important elections going on. You got state attorney, you got commissioners, you got mayors in Miami-Dade County, mayors in everywhere. You got them all. All right, let me get Dr. Steve Gallen on here so we can get this thing going. Day is the one and only. The great Dr. Gallen, always looking out for the kids. This is a real educator. We're gonna let Doc get ready, and then we're just gonna take off from there. But yes, people, it is very, very important. Hey, Doc.
Hey.
My man, 50 grand. How you feeling, my brother?
Hey, feeling good. Feeling good, brother. Feeling good. Feeling good.
Yeah, that's what's happening. What's the poster behind you? What's the picture behind you?
African hip bones. This is a significant piece of Black art. I've had it for about 20 plus years now.
Really?
20 plus years. Yeah, I've always been apt about collecting Black art. This is a unique piece, and I've always maintained it. I had to reframe it, line it up a little bit, and just hold on to it. I always got the sisters looking over my shoulder. How about that?
I see that. I see that. That's the first thing I'm like, okay, you got the sisters hanging over his shoulder. Hey,
over the shoulder.
Hey, man. Once again, I just want to thank you for coming on. You know, this Sunday Talk platform, and like I tell everybody, you know, this, you know, we've started this for some time now, and it's kind of picked up a lot of steam. A lot of people, you know, come on, and I just want to tell you, just like anything else, this is a platform that you can always come on and I just take over. It could be a Dr. Gallen take over and just have it without me. You know, whenever you want to, whenever you want to get the message out, you know, to the people, you know, you're always welcome, and you're always welcome to take over the platform as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. And I want to salute you, man, for continuing to be a voice. I've often been one of those people that when I was teaching at the university, I would tell my students who wanted to be aspiring administrators and they were working on their masters and their doctorates, I would always tell them, don't operate in the intellectual ghetto of titular leadership. I know that's some fancy stuff I'm saying, but what I was saying is, don't get caught up in being a leader based on title alone. Based on title alone. That's titular leadership, a title alone. And what I've always been impressed by you, brother, title or not, you always lead, you always speak, you always stand. And for me, I mean, authenticity of leadership is one who's willing to stand, speak, and fight for the people and for the issues. And you've done that. So salute to you, my brother.
Hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And likewise, likewise, you have always been in the forefront of helping people. You know, and I watch you. We go back 100 years. I mean, people don't even know how far back we go. I mean, we go back, you know, God knows how long. And I've always watched your career, and I've always watched you as a young man. Your dad and I used to go to I used to DJ at the club for the great wild man, Steve.
Wow, man.
Exactly. Most people don't know that. One of my favorite comedians and everything. And so I watch you. I mean, I watch you at Northwestern, all of the coaches and the faculty when you used to work there. All those guys got nothing but high praise. But the highest praise is so many guys and ladies have always said, Doc gave me my first opportunity. You know, it's just so many people. And so that's what I admire the most about you. You can see greatness in people, and you're able to tap into that, and then to allow them to show that they are great. And so
I
I always
appreciate
allow
that.
that.
You know, and when you mention that, and you and I talked about so many people, and it's countless people that, you know, God has allowed me to be able to touch and be able to support at a relatively young age. And when I look at some of the leadership around our district, around our community, around our state, it's just an humbling experience to know that God allowed me to be a conduit to a lot of these people. And the biggest thing is that none of them ever forget. You know, my late father always used to say, Steve would say, it's not where you come from, it's where you're going. But when you get to where you're going, don't ever forget where you came from. And don't ever forget the people and the places and the bridges that help you get there. And that's something that I've always tried to honor. And I'm glad that the people that I've supported over the past 30 years honored that as well. And I'm just so proud of so many of them. I mean, when you look from Florida City to County Line Road, I mean, our presence is felt, and I'm just so honored and humble, brother. Honored and humble.
That's right. Hey, talk about your journey, because everybody see, you know, they don't know Dr. Steve Gallen. Some people don't know Dr. Steve Gallen like we know Dr. Steve Gallen, and where you came from. If you could talk about a little bit about your journey and how do you ended up getting to be from one place to the next, where you came from, all the way up to being the vice chair of Miami-Dade County School System.
I mean, product of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. You know, Wild Man was a Rolling Stone, you know. So, that's my man. But I'm the youngest of 6, and I'm the youngest and the only one to go to college. It's no secret that 2 of my brothers that I shared a room with went to prison. My father left here with a 8th grade education, but with a doctorate degree in wisdom and experience. And you know, Wild Man was brilliant. He was a brilliant people person. My mom earned her GED at Dorsey on 71st Street at the age of 47 years old.
Wow.
And I, you know, came up and graduated from Northwestern and had a lot of educators that surrounded me. And in many cases, Luke, like what you all do with the young people on the football field, our teachers, our employees do that day in and day out. And that's really about saving kids from themselves. So I had a lot of people, man, that saved me from myself. And went on to FAMU and graduated in 3 years. I left high school as a teenage father. I had my daughter at 16 years old and understood that that was an additional responsibility that I would have to bear, but that motivated me. And graduated FAMU in 3 years and came back home to start my career as a classroom teacher in Liberty City. I always tell the story, the first time that I stepped foot in a building to teach, I came to be a substitute teacher.
Wow.
And it was at I'll tell you, it was at Charles Drew Elementary School. Oh. And Dr. Fred Morley was the principal, and his son pledged the same fraternity with me. He said, go out there and holler at the old boy, you know, get you in and start subbing. So when I came out there and sat and talked with him, he thought I was there to, you know, be a part-time custodian. I said, no, man, I'm coming here to be a substitute teacher. I say that to say that I took that one substitute teaching assignment and held on to it with a great sense of pride. I mean, I taught throughout the day. At the end of the day, I made sure the class was swept up, desks were organized, materials were laid out, notes were left for the teacher. And then the teacher started to request me to be a substitute teacher for them. Then I went on and substituted out at Henry H. Fowler and eventually became a full-time English teacher. Went on back to FIU and got my master's degree in education leadership. I was about 23, about to turn 24 years old, and I became the youngest assistant principal at 23 and a half here in Dade County. Wow. Continued my education in my journey and became principal at Holmes Elementary School. Did 3 years there. I was 26, and then I was moved over to Northwestern 2 weeks after I finished my doctorate at FIU. And then, as they say, the rest is history. Roger Williams told me I was going to go to Northwestern for maybe a year or two. I wound up being there 7 years and became the 3rd longest serving principal in the school's 50+ year history. I think now Mr. Aristide may have kind of gotten in front of me on that, but there's not many that stayed at Northwestern very long. Because, you know, when I left, after my 7 years, they had 5 principals in 2 years after I left. And now they did get some stability. Left and became a superintendent, the first and only Black to come through this district and become a superintendent of schools. Enjoyed that journey, learned from that journey. failed on that journey, rose back from that journey, and got into the consulting business and was doing very well. And my mom took ill, and now I'm coming to you.
Uh-oh.
People start tugging. Dr. Gallen, we would like you to run for the school board. And I don't know who paid, and I reached out to you amongst some other stakeholders, but let's just tell everybody, I sat and talked with you. Wait, Bo campus?
We were, yeah, I think we were at.
You took me out in Weston somewhere.
Yeah.
Was it Bo campus?
It was two, I think it was 2 times. One on Biscayne Boulevard. Was it me, you, and Larry?
The time that I decided to run, it was just you and I.
That was Bo campus.
Bo campus. Okay, I know it was west of 75. And I wish I knew you was paying before I started the order, because I went on with the wings and some fries and some water, and then you took the bill. But that was a great opportunity for you and I to sit down and talk. And you a man of your word, man of integrity. You didn't pick any sides. You just, hey, Doc, whatever you decide to do as it relates to doing what you've always done, lean in. And we leaned in, and we changed the trajectory in District 1 with a decisive victory in 2016. And we've delivered above the promise as it relates to what we were going to do for our district, our schools, our community, and most importantly, our children. And here I am, brother. Here I am. It's been one hell of a journey. I wouldn't trade it, brother. I wouldn't trade it.
One hell of a ride. I mean, I'm just waiting for I'm waiting for the Dr. Steve Gallen book, but you can't write it yet because you still going.
We got 3 that we've written. We started on the 4th one, but the story just won't end. We just got to get it out. But God is really the author of this, brother, and I'm just blessed to be a public servant. And people ask why I stand as I do, because I'm really standing in strength in what I believe God has purposed for my life. Because I mean, you and I both know everybody don't got the receipts.
The receipt. That's right.
Everybody don't have the receipts about this life's journey, and you and I, among some other people, have receipts as it relates to the rise, the fall, and then rise back up as a phoenix, because you stay true to who you are.
Correct.
Your integrity and your purpose.
So I mean, since you were talking about talk about being running, because people don't even realize that your term was up, and you were this year you were actually in an election, just like everybody else. You were supposed to be running for your seat, but then you run unopposed. I mean, how does that feel to run unopposed by?
Well, I mean,
nobody want to tangle. Nobody want to tangle with the bull. I guess.
Well, you have some out there. But again, it was a tremendous honor, man. I mean, when we talk about the process of seeking elected office, if you're going to do it right, it's a contact sport. And I don't mean just the negative impacts that you may face, but being able to go out there and contact and engage with people. And what I did in 2016, I knocked on over 10,000 doors myself before I actually hired people to be out canvassing for me, because I basically brought it down to simple mathematics, Luke. I looked at how many doors I would have to hit a day starting from January through June. And I did an algebra equation, and I stayed true to that. I mean, obviously not on Sundays. People don't want you knocking on their doors on a Sunday, but I mean, without fail, brother, I mean, I stayed the course from sun up to sundown, and, got an opportunity to really engage the voters, introduce myself, share my body of work, and obviously make 3 promises that I made to them. And my promises wasn't about being able to take District 1 that had the highest number of failing schools, wow, and eliminate F and D schools within 2 years. That was not part of the promise. It wasn't a part of a promise to be able to address issues of economic opportunity that were reflected in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. It wasn't a promise that we would anticipate Hurricane Irma, and now we would have to adopt a policy in which we are going to feed our children when schools are closed. That was something that was birthed out of an item I did, and that was on the heels of Hurricane Irma, when we had students out of school for nearly 11 days, and we really hadn't anticipated what we were going to do with those children. And the list goes on and on. I've proffered successfully over 40 plus items. But I made 3 promises, simply 3, that I would stand, I would speak, and if need be, I would fight. That is all I promised the people that I would do. And I will fight on those issues that were going to speak to this community, speak to the education of our children, speak to the quality of our employees. Look, I didn't get the full embrace of some of the unions as it relates to teachers when I ran, but I was the board member that filed the first item that led to the $850 million plus referendum. I filed that item in January 2018. I mean, I got the receipts. I could not have anticipated what we were going to do with reclassification on Florida High School Athletic Association. We've had a tremendous opportunity to work with tremendous board members. We have a phenomenal superintendent in Alberto Cavallo. I've known him for nearly over 30 years now. So, I mean, it was just an opportunity to bring another eye toward the work. And obviously, the record reflected that District 1 had been neglected academically. I mean, I'm just gonna call it for what it was. It was the receipts. We had the highest number of F schools. You had one school that had 5 consecutive Fs.
Wow.
And so we needed to create a conversation around these real issues and do it in a very respectful but unapologetic way. And I don't apologize for speaking truth to power, because at this particular point, when I came in, against all odds, and my Tupac voice, against all odds, against all odds, you know, the people spoke decisively, and I had an obligation, not simply to the people who voted for me, but an obligation to myself and who I represent to be as a person. So we've done a tremendous job, and when we came June 12th, and nobody filed to run, it was a tremendous experience. But hey, you know, if we had to go, like I said, District 1, let's go. They want to go, let's go.
Exactly. I mean, that's amazing. I've always that's how I always promoted music, and I've always told artists, you gotta, whether it was Pitbull or Trick Daddy, when those guys started out with me, I said, look, you gotta go reach out and touch somebody. You gotta treat it. You need to be able to. Your fan base need to be able to know that they could touch you, and so that's important. I mean, I'm looking at people right now. We have COVID. Folks can't go door to door right now, elected officials, to be able to do that. So they have to depend on a lot of Zoom conferences to get to people. But that is a hell of a way to do it.
And you know what, Luke, it was so humbling, man. And I'm not gonna get overly emotional, but it was so humbling because when you start talking about the seeds that you sow into the lives of people, if you sow positive seeds in the lives of people, whether some of the people you talk to that can tell you stories about what it was like to work with me, and probably not for me, but with me, because, you know, I was always able to walk with kings, but not lose the common touch. And when you look at the outpouring of support that I had gotten, being removed from Northwestern, or quite frankly, from the district at a certain point, people didn't forget that. You know, the children that I taught in elementary school didn't forget that. And you know what they did? They told their children. The parents didn't forget that, what I did for their children. And they held true to that. The grandparents didn't forget that. My contemporaries' parents didn't forget that. And we were able to get a 3-generational level of support. So I got the millennials, I got my contemporaries, and I got my contemporaries' parents who remember little Stevie from Liberty City.
Exactly. So I mean, one of the biggest conversations, one of the biggest things, and I know we'll want to get in. Obviously, the biggest thing is schools reopening, but one of the biggest issues before schools reopening was the Black disparity study when it came to Miami-Dade County schools. How did you address that coming in, and where are you at with the disparity study, whether it's in Miami-Dade County schools?
You know, I got to give credit to where credit is due. The fact that there was a disparity done is a testament to the school board that preceded me. It's a testament to the superintendent, because as you know, there are other municipalities, other forms of governmental entities that will not agree to do a disparity study.
Correct.
So let's put that in context. Sometimes
Miami-Dade County.
You said it, I didn't. I stay in my lane.
Yeah.
So you have other entities that won't even agree to do one. So for the superintendent, the board to collectively and cohesively agree to do that. That means they were willing to take a hard look at the historical deprivation that Blacks faced in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools economically. So the disparity study is really just your bill of health. Mm-hmm. And economically, when it came to Black folk, the district was unhealthy. I mean, we represent over 25% of the population in Dade County, but we're getting less than 5% of contracts in the district. The disparity study was the first step, a very bold step, because it allows you to then adopt policies that will ensure that people are appropriately represented and have opportunities that they would otherwise not have. Now, once you have the policy in place, so when I came in, you got the policy in place, but now you have to really start honing in on the practices. Are the practices yielding the results based on the policy? Mm-hmm. So once you get something on the books, it can go on the bookshelf and it can just sit there.
Correct.
If it's not being operationalized, if it's not being challenged, if it's not being discussed. I've done an item on that. Board member Mendros Mendengal has done an item on that. Maria Rojas has done an item on that. So all of the board members have been very supportive of pushing that conversation down there. And the superintendent has really been very instrumental in leading that particular process, but we have to keep it at the forefront. So what we did is we came back in and we did a number of things. Number one, I went for a strong degree of transparency. This mm-hmm. whole question about who's getting paid what and how much, that is not something no longer required through basically a public information request. We require a dashboard now. You should be able to go to the website, see what projects have been rolled out in the community, how much the projects were worth, who got the contracts, what were their classifications or certifications. That's information we should readily have and be willing to be transparent about. We did another item relative to an audit of the general obligation bond. So we did an audit of that. We expended about $500 million and we had not had an audit. And that audit looked at a number of things. Audit came back clean, but there were also opportunities once again to deal with disparities that continue to linger. Look, I just mentioned this last week as it relates to COVID-19. Last week, there's an item that was discussed in the budget relative to about $20 million for COVID-19 purchases. And one of my colleagues, it was Susie Castillo, actually, she asked a question relative to the bidding process for procurement. And that question was addressed. But I also asked a question relative to the procurement process relative to inclusion. Mm-hmm. So we have a policy on the books. And just because we're in a state of COVID-19 response, some would call it an emergency. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that that gives us an opportunity to abdicate our commitment. So what I said simply is, if there's $20 million that came down from the federal government for COVID-19 related responses, how much of that $20 million are Black folk gonna get? Mm-hmm. We don't wanna ask that question after the money's gone. We need to ask that question on the front end, begin with the end in mind. Correct. So part of that process is to, again, to stand, to speak, and to fight for those things you fundamentally believe in and the things that the board and the superintendent have supported. We just have to stay on it.
Right, and for people who are watching, maybe they have a business, and I know it's probably a real long question, but I know you can sum it up perfect. For African Americans who are looking for opportunities, in Miami-Dade County school system, if they have a business, they want to, they want to bid, they want to apply, they want to try and get some business because, at the end of the day, what is it? The third largest school district in America?
Fourth largest school, fourth.
And the budget is what?
$5+ billion.
$5 billion.
$5+ billion.
$5+ billion. So now how can the brothers and sisters get some of them $5 billion? How can they go about with their businesses applying for those for some jobs in the school system?
Great question. A lot of people were restricting their mindset to GOB. That's the general obligation bond. That's the school construction. But once that goes out, that goes. We have to buy paper towels. Mm-hmm. We have to buy bathroom tissue. We have to buy chalk, well, not chalk, markers, pens, desks, furniture. We have to do professional development. We have to provide services for special needs students, ELL students, psychological services. So procurement is not restricted to construction. And that's what I had to push to make sure people understand that this is not about construction. This is about goods and services.
And services.
Goods and services. Okay, what goods do you have to sell, and or what services can you provide? So in this particular case, if you're a minority Black vendor, start out by having a conversation with the Office of Economic Opportunity. 305-995-1000, ask for the Office of Economic Opportunity. The assistant superintendent of that division is Ms. Jennifer Andreo, and they should be able to point you in the right direction to start the conversation relative to what business opportunities may be available, what business opportunities they'll be looking for in the future. But again, you have to stay informed and you have to get engaged.
Got
you have to get engaged. Information and engagement, that's how people are able to play.
You have to be informed and engaged. You're correct on that. So let's tackle schools opening, because obviously that's the biggest topic. I got 1,000 questions of people on here asking questions on the Facebook Live, and I encourage everybody. Once again, we're talking to Dr. Steve Gallen, Vice Chair of Miami-Dade County Schools School Board. What's the plan for reopening? I know that had to be difficult. That had to be because you got some parents want to take the kids to school. Some parents don't want to take the kids to school, but then at the same time, which I did not realize how important schools are to the actual functioning of the entire city. It just blew my mind, just thinking about, okay, listening to some of the conversations and some of the business owners, people, I can't, listen to some of the families. I got 4 and 5 kids at home. I got to go to work at the hotel. I can't go to work, but then I don't want my kid to go to school. So I know that you guys had to take all that into consideration. So if you could talk about schools opening and how did you guys come to some of the conclusions as to where you all at for the schools to be reopened?
Yeah, great question. And I'm glad you recognize what has now been recognized throughout the world. And I can say this with a great degree of partiality. I'm partial because I left Northwestern to go to FAMU to be a teacher. I've been a classroom teacher. So I've always respected and valued the importance of what education provides, not only to the development of young people, but to the stability of communities, the state, the nation, and the world. If people didn't know then, they know now how important our schools are to the organization, the stability, the structure, the operation of day-to-day lives of people. And prayerfully, we'll get to a point where our teachers and our educational professionals are respected as such. Too often, our educational professionals have been taken for granted in compensation and respect and other factors. But right now, from March through June, if people didn't know Root, now they know. Now they know. So we understood the challenges that decision was going to face for parents and working families. And we didn't take that lightly. But in education, we've always had one priority, first and foremost, after education, believe it or not. Our priority is to educate children, but our number one priority is to keep them safe. So we're not new to this conversation of making sure our children are safe. So we wanted to make sure that we took every measure to make sure that our children were safe. Our superintendent presented and the board approved an initial reopening plan that had several phases. We assessed our parents, we assessed our teachers, and we had to continue to monitor science. I don't know what they believe up in DC, but what we believe in down here on the Miami-Dade County Public School Board in the superintendent's office, we believe in science. We believe in data. We believe in following what the data and the trends tells us. So our initial plan contemplated 3 options: face-to-face, that's brick and mortar, distance learning, or a combination of both. That plan was presented prior to the significant increase in the levels of positivity confirmations. Our positivity rate has skyrocketed now. So what they recommended was a positivity rate 10% or below, preferably no higher than 5%. Miami-Dade County now is at 19% positivity rate. Totally unsafe, totally unrealistic for us to expect children to go into schools with a rate above 10%. It's at 19. So we had to pivot, we had to be fluid, and again, we had to follow the science. Last week at an emergency meeting, the superintendent provided an update as it relates to what our response is right now to have a safe and smart reopening. Safe and smart. And safe is in response to the 19% rate. So we have made a decision based on the data that school will be virtual starting out. And he's proposed that we extend the opening for an additional week. That will give us an opportunity for training of our teachers on a new platform. Training for our parents was an item that I put forth at the last board meeting, to train our parents, because I felt that parents were left out of that equation and were left to fend for themselves, and training on a new platform. Previously, we had 3, 4, 5, 10 different platforms. You might like Zoom. I might like Cisco. Somebody might like WebEx, and people using different platforms for educational instructional delivery. Right now, we're pursuing one of the products that are available and approved by the state, which is K-12. So parents will now have a singular platform for educating their children. So we're going to start out distance learning, and based on the data, we seek to phase in brick and mortar instruction.
Yeah, I have a question from Facebook. Thomas Tyrese, his question for you is, what can be done for students with disabilities?
What can be done with students with disabilities? We have an obligation under IDA to deliver the educational program that's required in the IEP. When I mentioned the phase in that we're anticipating, students with special needs are going to be a priority. Students with ELL are going to be a priority, and students who come from fragile, academically fragile communities and schools are going to be a priority. But again, if a student does have an IEP, a special needs students, they have an IEP, an individualized educational plan, we're still obligated to implement that. That would just be implemented virtually. So we don't have any option but to do that. Obviously, the state has provided some degree of flexibility. There are certain things that you may or may not be able to do, but parents, your IEP is to be implemented. You're still to engage with the school, and we're to provide for those educational services that are outlined in the IEP. Distance learning does not remove our obligation, Luke, to serve special needs students.
Mm-hmm. Ethel Sunshine has a question. She says, what about the bus drivers?
What about as far as?
I guess the school bus drivers.
Well, all about right now, it's a broad question. The bus drivers are still employed. It's a broad question. And you know, I advocate for the bus drivers. Right now, our plan does not reflect any negative impact to any group of employees. When we start transporting students, our transportation department has already started to develop a plan, and people can look at the plan for the entire district on our district's website at www.dadeschools.net. But there is a plan that speaks to transportation, making sure that that transportation program is safe and smart. So if you have a bus that can transport 50 students, they're being trained, and those buses are going to be set up for social distancing, where we may have to cut that in half.
Okay, I got one more question. What should parents and administrators keep in mind as they begin to reopen schools?
Number one, safety. Number one, safety. Safety of our children, and then the education of our children. Look, we understand that distance learning is not the most ideal delivery mode. And one of the things I was encouraged by is that we didn't concede. We didn't just give up and say, you know what, distance learning till January. We're saying if the data and the science changes late September, October, and we know that the research and the practice says that it's best to get children in a face-to-face situation for educational purposes, it's best to get children in a face-to-face situation for families, working families, then that's what we need to move to quickly and safely and smartly. So the number one priority that parents and administrators and everybody needs to be concerned with is the safety of our children and the education as well.
Mhm.
Safety first.
You mentioned the number. What's the I guess what's the target number? You know, because we have all these different numbers with 10%, 5%. What's the number that would trigger schools reopening?
5%.
Okay.
No, 5% or less. Some experts says below 10% you can go, you know, if you're at 7 or 8, you know, percent, but it's not just one snapshot in time. It has to go through a trend. So let's just say next week we hit 5%. We can't flip a switch and say, okay, we're going back to school. We have to be 5% over a period of time, because it could be 5 one day and it could be 25 the next. So it has to be a trend of no more than 10%. Most experts say no more than 5%. But at 10%, you can start looking at populations like special needs, ELL, and fragile students, not the entire population. Because if you start with that small group of students, that will provide an opportunity for social distancing, because you're not having a school full of children. But now if you get below 5, then it's game on.
Right. So
we're at 19 now. We're at 19.
We're a long way. So yeah. it gets okay. So it has to be 5% in a period of time to then say, okay, it's stabilized.
Yes.
Correct.
What they call it plateau. It plateaued and it's been consistent. Yes.
Right. And yeah, that's why we encourage everybody on here to, you know, put your mask on and be responsible.
And that's not a decision that the school district makes in isolation. We make that decision in consultation with the health department, county government, our medical experts. It's a team effort. And what we did, the superintendent organized a working group that had medical experts that provided input in that particular process. So we don't make those decisions in isolation. I was on a Zoom town hall earlier, and the person asked me a medical question. I said, I'm not a medical expert. We want to have people who have those backgrounds to give us advice and consultation on those critical decisions regarding the health and safety of not only our children, but our employees as well.
So now that you're going distance learning, we have students in blighted areas. Will they be able to get that in a lot of situations they don't have Wi-Fi? Will they be able to get Wi-Fi and laptops to be able to do their work?
Yes, we distributed over 100,000 laptops and from the March through June cycle. We didn't collect those because we extended learning opportunities through the summer. We do recognize that there's going to be a need for additional hardware to be given. We understand that outside of the system, we have a technological divide. So let's face it, and I've been very blunt about it. When things are bad for everybody, things are worse for Black people and poor people, period, point blank. When we start talking about the academic achievement gap, what COVID-19 has done is manifested, it's brought to light once again, the disparities and the gaps in terms of resources, in terms of technology, in terms of employment, in terms of home ownership. It once again has allowed this nation to see the manifestations of systemic racism, quite frankly, and other factors that keep Black and poor people further behind the 8 ball. So when it came to technology, we recognized that, but we were strategic about that and making sure that those children and those underserved communities had first dibs at the technological resources that they need. Connectivity still would be a problem. I think I was on the phone with you one day, and I'm just gonna be honest. When I'm coming down 54th Street on 17th Avenue, between 54th and 62nd, I have to call you back because the connectivity in that area is horrendous. But I can be in certain other parts of the community and the phone runs fine. So we have some real technological issues that go far beyond the school system, and we're working with our partners to make sure that we have connectivity. But again, we say to parents, we're decentralizing this particular process right now. What do I mean by that? When we went from March to June, we had to communicate through the district. 995 help. We want our parents to start re-engaging the school sites, re-engaging the principal, re-engaging the assistant principal, re-engaging the cafeteria manager, re-engaging the counselor, and most importantly, re-engaging the teacher, because that's going to be the point of contact and communication that's going to get things done. And if it can't get done at the school site, then they also know who to call next.
We got another question from Facebook from a grandmother. Her name is Maria Leonard. Maria Leonard, her question is, will kids still be able to get their breakfast in their lunch?
Yes, absolutely. We're very, very excited about continuing that particular process. I think I mentioned it early. That was a commitment that we started, and I was the author of that board item, that anytime our schools were closed, we were going to feed our children. And now that is a policy, that is a practice. And quite frankly, I think Dade County really set the bar across the state and across the country. And right now, feeding children when they're out of school is something that's expected right now, and it should be. It should be. So absolutely, we're going to continue feeding our children while they're out of school physically.
Yeah,
Breakfast and lunch.
No, that's great, because I could feel grandma pain through the phone, because when you coach football and you got these big 6'5" kids sitting in the house, and 3 other ones up in the house, and they're not at school. It can be a burden on some of those grandmothers. Speaking of
and grandma, I just want to say this, Luke, and grandma and other parents give us an opportunity to see the real people, the real faces, the real stories behind some of these numbers we talk about. What am I talking about? We talk about our district is 75% free and reduced lunch. That sounds like a number, but behind that 75%, those are real people, real families, real parents, and real children who live in situations where food is scarce. There's a food scarcity issue that we have in this community across this country, and that number cannot be lost. And this is kind of once again brought forth for me personally, parents that actually reached out and say, look, I depend on the school system, but my children need breakfast and lunch.
Man, yeah, that's very important. I mean, it's funny when you start talking about not funny, but then when you talk about 75% free lunch, I remember going to the Miami Northwestern football game in Dallas against South Lake Carroll, and it was a big article in USA Today. And they called Northwestern and the whole school district the free lunch versus. It was crazy. And then, and just like you say, I talked about bridging the digital divide maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I'm like, yo, at some point we need to be able to bridge the digital divide, and these companies need to be able to put up, as they're putting these poles up in our community, they need to be putting up Wi-Fi. And now we're here in a pandemic, and that's actually sad. I mean, speaking of sports, I got your good buddy. I said I got to bring another good friend of yours up in here, JT Wilcox. JT coming in, and we go talk some sports. But that's some good things. And let me ask you, so if parents want to know anything about opening up, they can go to the website, correct?
Yeah, they go to the website, but what I say right now at this stage of the game, parents need to operate under the auspices of going back to school. Talk to your principal. Know who your child's teacher is. Right now, if you're not having a conversation about your child's teacher and the schedule, then those conversations need to start being held right now. Go to the closest place where your problem get resolved, and if you don't get a response, then they also know where to go after that. But start
great.
with
Now we're joined by the number one sports analyst. I mean, you name it, high school sports, he done seen it all. JT Wilcox. Thanks for coming on, my brother.
Well, hey, listen, I appreciate you having me on, reaching out. When you reached out, I said, hey, whatever you need, just let me know where I need to be, when I need to be there, and let's make it happen.
Hey, especially with the one and only Dr. Steve Gatlin. I know you got a lot of questions for him.
Exactly.
Welcome, my brother. Good seeing you, man. Good
Same
seeing you.
here, same here, Dr. Gallen. I had the opportunity, the privilege of meeting Dr. Gallen when I was much younger, when he was still the principal at Northwestern, and my dad was obviously the voice of Trash Power and announces all of Northwestern's games. And he and my dad and Dr. Gallen are close friends. I'm sure Dr. Gallen will attest to that. And I had the opportunity, like I said, to meet him, and I really got to see what kind of a man he was back then, and just to see his ascent that he's done, all the great things that he continues to accomplish. You're definitely someone that I look up to as someone that I strive to be in terms of what you're doing for our community and for our people. So thank you.
Hey, that's what's up. See, we all get on here and do our testimonies about Doc, and then Doc sits up there and looks like a millennium. He look like he's 21 years old. So people sitting there thinking like, who they keep talking about? This guy from he knew all back in the days when I was young and all this, and then he's sitting up in there looking like a 21-year-old.
He talked about his father, and you mentioned about some books. I've published 3 books, and one of my books, When Morning Comes, talks about my experiences at Northwestern and a lot of things that happened in the urban core. And sadly, Luke, that continues to happen. And there's a significant number of chapters that are dedicated to football, whether we talk on Soul Bowl, and people don't understand what that high school experience was like when we talk about 50, 60,000 in an Orange Bowl. Like that really happened. That's not stuff that happened. And I talk about your father in the book. I refer to him specifically as the voice in the book, and I talk about him and how he has really been the voice of the community, voice of enthusiasm. But he doesn't just cite high school athletics and play-by-play. He really gives messages of hope, messages of education, and messages of unity. Much love for him, much love.
Yeah, listen, I've maintained, and my dad has opened great doors for me in terms of my career, specifically in sports journalism, and continues to do so. And I always say I have some very big shoes to fill, both literally and figuratively. I have some big shoes to fill, and I just hope that I can add, if I can add just a little bit to his legacy, then I've done my job as a son.
Hey, so let's get into some sports conversation. I mean, with before we get to H9, Doc, you restructured. I mean, talk about your mindset of restructuring the districting. If I'm saying it right, I mean JT, the expert on this.
Reclassification.
What was your mindset of doing? What was going through your mind when you said, "Okay, I'm gonna reclassify everybody" at that point?
Well, I got to be consistent in the story, and I did a couple of interviews on this. Believe it or not, I serve on the executive board with the Florida School Boards Association. But at this particular time, I was at a meeting with the consortium up in Tampa. And these were school board members from around the state. You're at dinner, and I'm gonna try to keep it brief. You're at dinner and you're introducing yourself, your background, principal here, principal there. And the moment I mentioned that I was formerly a principal at Northwestern, the eyes started to perk up. And some of my colleagues from Northern Florida were at the table, and the guy said, I'm just gonna be as blunt as I can. The guy said, yeah, you guys got great football down there. He says, you all really beat the hell out of each other up down there. And I mean, that's what he said. So I let that file in my head, and I started to take a hard look at what had just recently happened with respect to schools that we enjoyed them playing each other. But what I knew when I was principal at Northwestern, I had 3,200 kids. When I was principal at Northwestern, I had 3,200 kids. I think that under 2,000. Now, in other schools have had significant declines in enrollment, just demographics, for whatever the reason. But I knew enough that the enrollment was tied to the classification. So I kept saying, why are certain schools coming down to the wire fighting each other when they should not be in the same classification? Now, this is an obligation, one would argue, of the district, of the school, but I believe, and I still believe, that that's an obligation of the Florida High School Athletic Association. They're ultimately responsible for classification of schools. Mm-hmm. They are. So those classifications hadn't been updated in years, if not over a decade. And our schools each year kept getting down to the wire and beating each other up when they should not have been competing for the same title. So I decided to proffer an item to initiate the reclassification of schools in the Miami-Dade County Public School System according to the Florida High School Athletic Association bylaws. Not what I felt, not what the district felt, but they have bylaws that determine the criteria. Follow your bylaws, implement the criteria. And as you know, once we did that, that triggered a significant reclassification, and every school failed as I said they would. Quite frankly, as I said they should. It was simply counting the enrollment, placing them in the right classification. But nobody had any motivation up there to do that for the obvious reasons. And the outcome of that was, out of the 8 football championships, South Florida won 7.
They did, and Dr. Galvin, that's very true. One thing that I've seen though, because there have been reclassification edicts that have come out in the past that would move certain schools, where you would see Northwestern would drop down to 5 or Carroll City drop down to 4, and they would petition to get back in 6, because that's, to what they say, that's big boy football. This is 6A football, and that's what they wanted. They wanted to play each other, to say we beat Northwestern, we beat Central, we beat Norland to go to state. And so what you did basically just said, okay, listen, yes, I understand we want to play each other, we want to beat each other, beat our chest to say, hey, we run 6A or we run big boy football in Dade County, but not everybody can still get a piece of the pie. You're going to knock somebody off from the table from being able to eat. So what you did was now allow them to, everybody now can get a piece of the pie, which is something that I think, for better or for worse, made the state say, wait a second, something's not, because, and if you think about it, even when our schools were still kind of clumped together, we would routinely bring home at least 4. Routinely.
Yeah.
So now to open it to where now they're talking about bringing in 7, and the only reason that they don't get 8 is because we don't have anyone.
Don't have anybody in that class. That's right.
I'm sure if we had a Class 1A team, they would be right there competing for and probably winning that state championship as well. So what you did, like I said, basically just said, okay, guys, listen, I understand what your mindset has been, what there needs to be a paradigm shift. You shifted the paradigm of what you did.
And I appreciate that. And it's and they still get to play each other. Like you say, they still get to play each other. They still get to beat their chest locally, but the bigger picture, and I Torian Bean, he gave me the phrase, I'm gonna give him credit for it. Everybody eats. Everybody eats. And so that became the thing. Everybody eats, B. That's from Luke. That's from Paid in Full. When the man came up on the spot, he came to the trap. He say, "What's wrong with you?" Man say, "I ain't eating. I ain't eating." And the man say, "Everybody eats, B. Everybody eats." So it took a macro approach to looking at things not singularly as an individual school, but looking at what we have to represent as a district. And again, that was a win for the district. And shout out to my good friend and colleague and champion, Dr. Dorothy Bendross-Mendengal. Her schools ran the tables. I ain't get anything in District 1, but she ran the tables with Booker T, Northwestern, and Central. So again, but it was about the whole district the school district as a whole, and giving as many of our students the highest platform that they can have to shine.
Right. And
go ahead.
One thing that we brought up about the reopening of schools, Luke brought that up already. Can you talk about how that pertains to athletics? Because that's been a big topic of discussion across the nation, not just here in Florida and South Florida specifically, but across the nation. But to bring it back down specifically to South Florida, how does the reopening of schools affect athletics and extracurricular activities?
Right now, I know Luke is, this is what really was the catalyst for some of the things we're going to talk about. So let's jump right into it, JT. As you are aware, one of the things I would say, Luke, politically, I know you've been doing a tremendous work, brother, in terms of the politics, and a lot of people look at political roles and responsibilities from others. They call it photo ops, community service. But one of my good friends always says to me, and she says it, and she knows who I'm talking about, what policies do you deliver? What's going to be your policy legacy? What are you going to do that's going to outlive a photo, a post, an event, what kind of policy positions you're going to take. And the way you get strong policy positions is through engagement, is listening. It's not always what you say, it's what you hear. And I'm very blessed to have people like Brother Luke and others who keep me on point with a lot of things that are happening in our community, and quite frankly, outside of our community. So I was traveling back from Orlando, and I got word about it, and the word came from somebody that we both know, and both of us looking at right now, that ain't me. What happened on Monday? They had a meeting, and it was once again what I call a consistent dance of dismissal, disrespect, and disregard of South Florida. And another item I got, and I'll get back to that later on, about the revenue sharing. So it was almost like they added again. What are you talking about? They decided that they were going to start fall practice July 27th. Was it 27? 27.
27. Mm-hmm.
And we just talked about the reopening criteria that we have based on a 19% positivity rate. Miami-Dade, Broward, and actually Palm Beach. Definitely Miami-Dade is the talk of the nation. We're not the talk of the state. We're the talk of the nation. And if you're the Florida High School Athletic Association, you're supposed to represent the state of Florida in the interest of all school districts and all schools and ultimately all students. So that decision, which went against the recommendation of their own sports medicine and advisory committee, was one of the things that caused me to cringe. And he will tell you, I literally pulled over on the side of the road and started to make some determinations about what next steps I would take. Obviously, it was something that spoke to the safety and health of our children. That's a priority for me. You can't wait for that. And sometimes you have to make a strong declaration. You got reclassification, you got the revenue sharing questions, you got a historical perception of a lack of engagement, respect, and consideration from a body that's supposed to represent you. So then you start to say, what are your options? And your options are either you work with them and try to get them to get on the same page, or you look at other options to get off the plantation. Yes, I said it, get off the plantation and build your own. And that decision, to your question, is based on what they were going to decide. So what does athletic look like in a reopening is usually driven by the Florida High School Athletic Association that sets the schedule. They were setting a schedule that was going to do two things, JT: compromise the safety and health of our children and ignore parity for fair and equitable competition. Those are two things: safety and health, because we couldn't put them out there with a 19% participation rate. But fair and equitable means you're going to give other districts 4, 5, 6, 8 additional weeks to prepare and expect our children to compete at the same level. That's not fair. That's not equitable. And I'm not going to be quiet about that. So I was very proud that not only did I speak about it, the superintendent echoed the sentiment. Other people around the state echoed the same sentiment. And as you know, they called an emergency meeting 4 days after that declaration on what I'm proposing to do. And now they're seeking to remedy it by extending it. But the barn door is up and the horse is already out on that conversation, and we go run on and see what the end's gonna be.
So now,
Right.
Go ahead.
And I think the mark is being missed by a lot of people in terms of sports, in terms of trying to, broker a restart in various sports, because there's so many hurdles to clear. And I'm well aware, and it's something that I'm empathetic and sympathetic to, as far as what athletics means to our student athletes, especially in our communities. And what it means for them is access to a higher level of education that they probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I understand what athletics mean to our students here in South Florida, but at what cost do we chase that? Because again, health and safety should be our top priority.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And when you have a body that did not serve as the voice, no pun intended, JT, the voice, did not serve as the voice for all students and all schools and all school districts, when that's what they're supposed to do, then you have to call a question. You have to call them out. You have to call them out. So
with that said, you did call them out with H9.
H9, yes.
H9. I mean, it's the talk of the town, it's the talk of the state. You know, is Miami-Dade County getting out of the FHASA, and the reason why? I mean, can you
I proffered an item, and those who know me and those who don't, and I think they've gotten a sense of who I am and what I represent. And look, I don't make these decisions in a vacuum. If you go to some of the social media, you had Republican state senators going on social media saying, I support Dr. Gallen's position and item. In Tallahassee, you had Marco Rubio weighing in on this. Senator Marco Rubio, meaning this is not a Black issue. This is not a Dade County issue. This is an issue of fair and equitable representation. And we're talking about being the largest district in the state of Florida and the fourth largest district in the nation. And you're going to make a decision that dismisses the health and welfare of our children and the fair and equitable participation. Then no, we're going to have a conversation about that. Now, I'm pragmatic. Let's have that conversation. And I think what they may have thought is, okay, now we're going to pull it back and we're going to stop the conversation. No, we're going to continue to have a conversation. Now we're going to look at what options we have. We have a number of options pursuant to what's in the statute. They are authorized by the state, but they're not mandatory by the state. A lot of people don't know that. They're not mandated. And I'm not saying you throw out the baby with the bathwater either. I understand that. We have to understand, but we got to have the conversation. And I hope that, my colleagues on the board support us having that conversation and looking at what options we will have, not for Dr. Gallen and not for this year, not for next year, just for the future of high school and middle school athletics in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, when we may have opportunities that may be more beneficial to our school district, that may be more beneficial to our schools, but more importantly, that may be more beneficial to our children. And if we don't explore things that may be more beneficial, then we're missing the mark.
Right, and it's not unprecedented for schools to pull out of the FHSA. It's not unprecedented. Other schools now, the caveat is they were smaller private schools that we had in South Florida that pulled out and created standalone conferences, and they were football only. There was a Southeastern Football Conference that had teams from Broward and Palm Beach in it, as well as from a couple different areas. There was a Gold Coast Football Conference, the Football Independent Football Conference. But again, these are smaller schools. You're talking Palmer Trinities and Archbishop McCarthy, but there is precedent for schools to pull out the FHSAA, create their own conference, their own schedule, have their own championships. So there is precedent for that. Now, the question now becomes, we're not talking about private schools that have certain amenities that maybe the public school, that have certain amenities that the public schools just don't have. Now, how does that change it? How does that look now if that is the course of action, is to create an independent or Miami-Dade County Public Schools conference? One, is it football only? And two, how does it look? How is it executed?
Well, great question. And one of the things, when I say I'm pragmatic, I don't always begin with the end in mind. I always believe in the process. And what that means, JT, is let's have the conversation. Let's go through the process and see what that looks like. There are people much more smarter than me. Sometimes God uses me, and I use this word a lot, Luke. I'm just the conduit sometimes. Sometimes I'm the catalyst. You could be the conduit or the catalyst, or you could be the conduit and the catalyst. The catalyst sometimes strikes a match and get the conversation going. The conduit is the one that God uses to move agendas through. So in this particular case, I hope to be the catalyst and the conduit for a conversation to explore. We may come up with an exploration that says, my God, we should have been did this. Or an exploration may say, no, stay away from it. But that process, I believe, should run its course and have the input, have the review, have the contemplation of all elements relative to partnerships, relative to sponsorships, relative to revenue, relative to operational, relative to all of those issues that perplex us and that vexes us around being on a historically concerning field of play. I want to use another word, field of play relative to high school sports in the state of Florida. I mean, look, we didn't talk about my revenue sharing item. I did a revenue sharing item last year, and we're still trying to resolve that. The revenue sharing item is saying, how much does it cost for school X in Miami-Dade County to participate in a state football game? And how much money do they get from Florida High School Athletic Association? We talk about being financially strapped, financially challenged, but you know, it may be when the dust settles, and I know in one case that is the case, that we're operating in an upside down proposition, meaning it costs more money to participate to the school than they get in revenue. So when our schools travel across the country and play teams out of state, they pay for travel, accommodations, food, and if it's really a good program, they're gonna give them a check to take back home and to put in their account. When you go to compete for a state title, in this particular case, it may cost you, and I'm using a round number, it may cost you $20,000 to go and compete, but then you only get a revenue of $10,000. That means it costs you $10,000 to go and participate. And I just think we can do better when I'm looking at $25 parking, streaming, merchandising, all of those things. So what my item said, open up the books. Open up the books. Let's look at it.
So they haven't been opening, they have not been opening the books? I mean, they don't.
I mean, we haven't called a question to look at that particular aspect of it. Let's look at what the receipts have been, and then we can reconcile. My item, if you read my previous item, it said, let's look at the revenue, let's look at the liabilities, and let's reconcile the two.
And I'll to jump in here, I can to share a quick story, and I'll leave names out of it. I've been on plenty of sidelines. I've been on plenty of sidelines and covered plenty of high school football playoff games. And there was one night in particular where Team X won the game. They were favored to win, they went and they won. And some administrators from that school had a brief conversation, and they were like scratching their head like, man, how are we going to get where we have to go next? They almost felt like they didn't want to win, or that they were reluctant to win because they knew the bill that was coming down the pike. And that is unfair and unfortunate that our schools or in our school administrators have to be put in a position like that. So it definitely, and this has happened not just with football. I've heard it in other sports as well. Some of what they consider non-revenue sports. Exactly. Non-revenue sports have the same issue. I've heard at basketball team, how are we going to go pay for potentially almost a week in Lakeland? Or 4 or 5 days, we can't do that. Or, we're going to be really strapped to do that. So it is unfortunate, and I definitely understand and applaud your request to open up the books, because you look at it, and the FHSA, I think for a long time, it's just kind of been, and Luke, you asked the question, well, the books haven't been open or they haven't been transparent, because it's one of those situations where they've kind of played the background. It's just, okay, well, that's just the FHSA. It's like, okay, I mean, that's just the FHSA. So nobody's going to really challenge it, because they put on the event, they give you trophies, they give you medals, and when you go and compete,
and they rush you off the field, and they rush you off the field for the next game. Right. Get out, clear the stadium for the next game.
Wow, that's pretty much it. But meanwhile, like Dr. Gallen said, there's merchandising. You're talking about they have an official football sponsor, whatever the playing ball is, whether it's a volleyball or a soccer ball, they have an official ball sponsor. They have different sponsors for different things, rings, like you said, the streaming. I mean, so that money is going somewhere, and it's not going back, or at least enough of it isn't going back to the schools. Wow. Especially the ones that are competing for these championships that they're hosting.
I'm gonna make you a little more upset, Doc. So when you go into the negotiation with the Florida High School Association, our program, Liberty City Optimists, you compete and you eventually end up going to the Nationals, which is the Nationals are in Orlando. You got to stay for a whole week, like JT said, when you go to play basketball. Pop Warner, locally, they don't have the local championship game, either at FIU or some stadium. They'll generate the revenues from that game and then give each team and cheerleading money to go and travel. So each team will get like, okay, they'll take the money and bust it down. Now, who all won the championship? All right, here go you a check for for 5,000. Here go your check for 5,000. Here go your check. And so it's beyond me the fact that, you know, and again, my football hat on, we're playing in the playoffs, and the announcer is saying, do not Facebook Live because we're live streaming the playoff game. They said that this year. So I'm like, the playoff, hold on. So you're generating revenue leading up to the actual game. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, JT, the state takes the gate, portion of the gate of all playoff games.
Yes. Once that championship series start, they get their cut.
So
exactly, because they even sent a script that the PA announcer is supposed to read, and they're supposed to pub all those sponsors that we talked about. They send a script to the schools, and this is across the board, every sport, football, basketball, soccer, you name it. There's a script that has to be read once you get into the state playoff series, like Dr. Gavin says, and there's a script that's supposed to be read that, and a portion of that includes promo reads for those sponsors.
Wow. And so leading all the way up into the state championship game, or whatever sport it is, soccer or whatever it may be, you generated all this revenue because you took in control of a large portion of these gates. And I'm just thinking about these super games, these super semifinal games where Trash Palace is filled up to the capacity, people hanging on the chandeliers in Broward at their games, and now all this money being generated, you can't pay for the teams that make it to state. That's ridiculous.
And the liabilities to have those games are on the hosting school. So when we're at Transpow, the police, the security, the ticket takers, all of those liabilities are on the school. They're on the school, and we're not even getting into the band and cheerleaders and all of those kinds of things. Thank God for some of our young men who have come back and given back, to Teddy Bridgewater, I'm just speaking of him. I know others have given, so I don't want to get in trouble, but Teddy is very, very openly generous about sponsoring buses for the band and things of that nature. Those are things that just don't happen if the school doesn't have the revenue. Now, throw back to my time. 3,200 kids, Orange Bowl, 50,000, 60,000. I mean, we weren't full. We had a lot of revenue. I had a lot of money. And football, for the most part, carries the non-revenue sports. I think JT mentioned that. So the young ladies have to have tennis. That's not a revenue producer. Volleyball maybe. Softball, baseball. Those are non-revenue sports. Soccer, but those children still need to be able to compete, need to have uniforms, need to be transported, and we need to be able to support them. And then you get into the title now with the young lady sports. Track is another one. So these are some things that we need to take a hard look at, and we cannot be in a position to have our schools being fiscally manipulated or fiscally taken advantage of when there are some other options we need to consider.
Because it all adds into the experience. I mean, because when I was coming up, the band was at every game, and the band was 80, 90, 100 deep. Now it's essentially like a pep band. You may have 20, 30 students out there, and a handful of dancers or young ladies with the flagettes, and they pick and choose which games they come to. And it's unfortunate because it takes away from the atmosphere and the experience of what a high school athletic event is supposed to be. Because quite frankly, and it's trickled down from pros to college and even now in high school, people can stay at home and watch the game. They can do that. There are opportunities for them to do that, whether it's just streaming or somebody, like you said, sitting in the stands on Facebook Live. I mean, let's just be real, it happens. So, but we have to make sure that the experience is there to continue to promote people actually coming out to the game, purchasing a ticket, and sitting there to watch the event. And that includes the band and the cheerleaders and homecoming events and all those kind of things, and making sure that our student athletes look the part and are getting the most out of their experience of being student athletes.
And one of the things you're right, JT, and you mentioned pros in the college. This narrative has been elevated at those levels. We now have laws. When I wrote the item at that time, we had just passed the law in California. I think it's in New York, where now you all know that college athletes can now start to receive some enumeration for their representation. So people are recognizing that. This is not to say high school players should get paid. I'm not saying that, but it's the mindset about the overall historical exploitation of student athletes, period, to a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm not talking about high school football, but high school sports, but it can be a multi-billion-dollar industry, but multi-million-dollar easily. But the exploitation of our most vulnerable, our most fragile, our most neediest students and needing a chance for an opportunity, and we got to speak for them. And I'm saying this is not just me. This is happening it has happened at the national level. JT, you follow it closer to me. The NCAA voted for it, right? It's on the books.
Mm-hmm.
They get paid now. So the mindset has changed that, they just can no longer exploit that. So we're not talking about the exploitation of our student athletes, but our schools that lose money to participate.
Yeah, and it has. And I'm gonna tell you, put my coaching hat back on. With these new laws that these states have adopted that go in effect, I think is July of next year. It has changed a lot and just talking to college recruiters and talking to them, I really originally thought they were basically going to allow the players that are already in the school, that already got the star quality that's at the different colleges, whether it's Florida or any of these other places, that they were going to be able to, obviously, because they've already got the name recognition in the town and they already have a draft status, that they would be the ones that will reap the rewards of sponsorship dollars because they already made a name for themselves. That's not true. Okay. They're now, right now today, they're recruiting the 2021 class, and the conversation is you're going to get with Alabama, you're going to get $80,000 in sponsorship. Yeah, that's the conversation. And so now it's a big old bidding war with these kids right now today. So now, for instance, now the kid then commits to Alabama and he's already guaranteed 80,000, or he goes to Florida where he's guaranteed 100,000, and it's all across the board. I mean, these are the conversations. So this, because we have Friendly Dodge, they're going to give you 50,000. The pizza place is going to give you another 25,000. So that is what they're doing. Going now, you have these seniors going into their senior year already guaranteed $100,000 and $150,000. I mean, it is at some point it's going to trickle down to high school, because like I take a kid who I think he's done a good job of marketing himself, and JT, you know him. What is it? G7. The kid from Booker T, the receiver.
Oh, Ja'Cory Brooks.
Yes, he was already marketing himself. Guys was on the sideline. They had this 7 on. He already has a brand and everything. And it's like, so those type of situations will probably end up happening in the high school, because it makes all the sense in the world for those colleges now to start putting marketing into those players going forward.
But if you think about it, it kind of already has, just at a different level. And it's basically now on the level that the colleges was at previously. Now that's what the high school level is. And that's talking about uniforms and facilities. And, that's, you're going to come here and wear Nike, or you want to go somewhere else and wear Under Armour, or they don't even have something for you where you got to wear your own stuff. No, come here and we'll have you Nike down every game. Or come here and you're going to play at Traz, or you're going to play at this place, or we're going to go to Texas, or we're going to California, or we're going to Georgia. That's kind of what it is. That's that recruiting tool now at the high school level. And now that the colleges graduate, excuse the pun, is graduated on to something different, now high school then graduate on to the next thing. And maybe that is, some sort of actual, I mean, it can't be monetary because they're still amateur athletes, but there will be another thing that will be used.
And go ahead, Doc.
No, I was going to say, and to the extent that over time, a school, well, an athlete, a school, or a district in this particular case has built their brand, has built the program. When I was at Northwestern, I used to say, we're not a team, we're a program. You know, we don't rebuild, we reload. I mean, you have a program from junior varsity. I mean, I remember all that stuff. So you're talking about a district in the case that has built a solid program, and we're talking football, but let's not get into basketball. Let's not even talk about girls track. Let's not talk about boys track or baseball. I mean, Miami-Dade County Public Schools is a strong educational institution, an A-rated school district for academics and achievement gap. Yes, we have opportunities to improve, absolutely. Our improvement comes from having the tough conversations around educational equity, and in this particular case, equity of our students in the athletic program. But we have to keep having the conversations, and we can't be timid about it. We can't be timid about it. But when you build a program, when you build a brand, people will come. And I don't have a problem with a brand that you built allowing a mechanism by which the school and ultimately the students can benefit. Because if you have a school that's getting some enumeration, when I was principal at Northwestern and our team would travel, they would pay the school, like donate, pay the school's expenses, but they also give you a check to take back because they know you're a draw. You are a draw. People are gonna come fill the stadium or watch it on ESPN, ESPNU,
Just or ESPN even.
ESPN because your school is playing, and that's a draw. So a lot of these things have not been fleshed out in a way that's equitable and quite frankly, that's transparent and quite frankly, that's fair. And that's all we're calling for. It's transparency, fairness, and equity.
Well,
quite frankly, if Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and I'll throw Broward in there too, and Palm Beach, if those schools were to pull out, and let's just talk football, we won't even talk other sports because across the board, like you said, the South Florida area, the Tri-County area, we'll put it up against anybody in the country. The numbers bear that out. But you pull those teams out, and as I said, just talking about football, anybody that tries to claim that they are a state champion is not a true state champion if they have not played a team or teams multiple from South Florida. Because again, the best football is played in South Florida, not in Texas, not in California, not in Georgia, in Florida, but specifically South Florida.
So that means we're going back to the Big Nine.
Listen, it's you know, it's school districts across the state that are very interested in this conversation. I mean, and I cited them. I'm not hiding it. It's in the board item. If you get a chance, JT, read it. You know, it's 4 pages. It's in there. My recommends are in there. It's school districts across the state that are watching to see what, you know, we're looking at doing. But obviously, I said very pragmatic. I'm looking for, we need the support of my colleagues, but we're going to have the conversation. And again, we must have a conversation if there's an opportunity to improve. Number one, to protect the health and welfare of our children. That was the catalyst. That was what struck the match. You know, that's what really said to me, the audacity, the unmitigated gall, the temerity to just do that without any regards for a 19% positivity rate. But then the next iteration is the fair and equitable participation and preparation of our children. Fair and equitable, fair and equitable.
Thank you, Dr. Gallen. I had you on here for almost an hour and a half. Thank you, JT Wilcox. If there's any parting words y'all want to say, knock yourself out.
Hey man, always a pleasure, my brother. We go stay the course and we go make it do what it does.
And again, thank you so much for having me on. I mean, this is to be in this group is, I mean, even though it's virtual, I mean, I feel like it's giving me a lot of energy with that. But to everyone, continue to be safe, be well. Continue to follow all guidelines as far as safety, masks, social distancing. Please do it so that curve can go down and we can start to get back to as much normalcy as possible.
There you go. There you go.
There go my girl. There go my girl.
Right there.
That's the boss lady there. Where can they find you, JT, and see your stories?
On Twitter, follow me at JT Wilcox Sports on Twitter. I'm doing work with Florida Memorial University now, so you'll definitely see a lot of information about the Florida Memorial Lions, but still doing things with college and high school athletics and some pro stuff as well. So JT Wilcox Sports on Twitter.
Thank you.
And at Doc Steve Gallen on Twitter, at Doc Steve Gallen on Twitter, the Dr. Gallen on Instagram, and Steve Gallen III on Facebook. Stay safe. Appreciate you. Love you guys, man. Until the next time.